Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper. And I'm a prepper, but I'm also a gun guy. And those lines can be blurry sometimes. And one thing that I struggle with is collecting more firearms and trying out new platforms and ammunition types in order to find out what's the best possible thing in order to accomplish other said thing. And I end up with a lot of different items, which is not good for logistics when it comes to being prepared. Now, I'm in a lucky position where I have a lot of my bases covered when it comes to the bare minimums. However, I'm still on this journey of finding out exactly what I like the best or what works, and I need things to have practicality in order for them to maintain their position within my inventory. And if I don't have a practical use for something, it ends up having to go away because I use all of my stuff and I don't have safe queens, and things that just sit in the safe don't really need to be there in my opinion. So I thought what would be good is to share some of my thought process here with each firearm you see here on the table and the ammunition types to give you some reasons for why there may be some practicality there and give you some ideas about how I might decide to either get rid of something in the future or keep it because of what it provides. And hopefully by making this video, I can actually make some of those decisions as well. Now, before we get going into it, I want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. And thanks to them, I can make videos like this, give you my ideas and opinions about all this kind of stuff, and keep moving forward in preparedness. So that's a big thanks to Midway USA. Now, as you see, I've got a chronograph here on the table, and one of my goals here to move forward on the channel is to do some more testing when it comes to different ammunition types, different barrel lengths, to find out what velocities we're getting, what level of energy we can expect from some of these different cartridges, and then of course, hopefully test it out on some reactive targets as well. So that'll give us an idea of whether or not we need other levels or layers of practicality for self-defensive purposes based on what the most likely threat would be, right? And so that's one of my goals here. But for right now, we're going to talk about different ammunition types and different firearms platforms that are on the table right now. My thought process and justifications for having these in the inventory and testing them out and seeing whether or not it will work for me, and then deciding if I need to move forward from there on changing things up once again, right? Which I think for anyone who really likes guns and does a lot of stuff involving guns is probably an inevitability, right? So first off, on the end here, we have the Beretta 30X Tomcat. Now, full disclosure, that pistol was provided to the channel by Beretta. So that's cool because I'm testing stuff out and they seem to be very supportive and I can appreciate that. And I'm approaching that pistol as a backup gun. And I think having a backup gun can be sensible, right? Now, my initial thoughts were, well, I don't necessarily know if I want to add 32 ACP into the mix, right? So we're adding another ammunition type into the inventory, and it's a very weak ammunition type. So in case you've never seen 32 ACP before, it's a really small cartridge. And I don't know if it'll focus on that or not, but either way, it's not very strong. However, it's still more powerful than a 22 long rifle, and it's a center fire cartridge, so it's more reliable in the sense of ignition. And the pistol itself has been very reliable. It's got some weight to it. It's a solid metal frame gun. And what's nice about that is that because of the lower recoiling cartridge in a heavier pistol platform, it shoots much more pleasantly than something like a micro 9mm does or something like a Ruger LCP 380 does. And so I'm definitely developing some opinions on that pistol. I'll make a whole video about it here at some point in the future. But as of right now, it serves the role of a backup gun pretty well. It's a little big in some aspects compared to some of those other options that are out there. It's a little heavier than them too, but you can actually shoot that gun all day long at the range. And it doesn't wear you out, it doesn't hurt your hands, it isn't snappy or anything. You can put rounds on target relatively easily. So I'm not sure yet on that one, but as a pistol, it's a nice design and it's reliable and I can appreciate that, but does it belong in my preparedness inventory? Those are things we're going to discover, but I wanted to share the practical aspect of what that pistol might be usable for in the sense of not just being for a backup gun, but also for somebody who might be recoil sensitive, right? It's got a manual safety. It is a double action, single action, right? If you turn the safety on and pull the trigger, that's how you drop the hammer safely, apparently, which I didn't realize until recently here. But what's nice about this particular pistol is if you press this little button, the barrel pops up, and then you can actually load a bullet or a cartridge right into the chamber, close it back down, and now you're ready to shoot. So if somebody isn't necessarily of the hand strength to rack the slide and do anything like that, this pistol makes it so they don't have to. So for someone who is recoil sensitive, elderly, maybe a small person like a minor or something that you just want to be able to have an ability to let them defend themselves, that gun can do a lot and still be shootable for those people as well. Not just easy to load, but also easy to shoot. So it has some more practicality than just being a backup gun, but will that make the cut all the way through and through? That really depends, and adding a secondary cartridge like 32 ACP in the mix when it's very weak and not very good for self-defense, other than being able to say it's better than 22 long rifle, is questionable, right? So, all in all, it's been a great pistol though. No complaints there. Now moving on, we have a 10 millimeter. This is the Smith & Wesson M&P Performance Center 10 millimeter, the M2.0. And on paper, it's a really good value. This pistol packs a huge punch for how much you get for your money in the sense of features. It's got everything. It's got a ported 5.6-inch barrel. It's got a action-tuned performance center trigger. It's got an optics cut. It's got suppressor height night sights. Like, it's got all the stuff. It even has a manual safety, which I actually quite like, because if you're ever going to carry a 10 millimeter pistol like off body or something like that, well, you can turn on the safety and it's a little bit more secure than just having something in a chest rig or something that has no safety at all, right? So it just kind of gives you that extra layer of security if you desire it. But I actually like it for what this pistol would be made to do. So what's the point of a 10 millimeter, right? Why would I want to add these huge rounds into the mix? These are 230 grain hard cast. This gun eats them all day long, no problem at all. Well, here's the thing. A 10 millimeter is a great woods gun, right? That's what we always hear about it. It's for bear defense. It's for, four-legged predators. It's got a lot more power and a lot more kinetic energy and a lot more penetration than something like a 9 millimeter. So it actually does separate itself to a degree of power to where it starts to add more practicality into that mix. You're reaching up towards, Magnum revolver territory while still maintaining a modern striker-fired double-stack platform with high capacity. This is a 15-round magazine, right? As opposed to a 6-shot revolver. That's a lot of ammo and then a very easy mag change if you use all the ammo. So it's got all those benefits, and then it's, of course, like I said, cut for an optic. It's got a light rail and everything on it, so you can modernize it and use it in the same fashion as you would your defensive handgun. So that's why I wanted to try that out. And honestly, another practical purpose for why I have this pistol right now is because I haven't had any experience with the M&P platform before this particular pistol. I have shot some in the past, but I've never owned one. And so now I get to actually check out what the M&P series is like. I get to check out the ergonomics, which are slightly different because of the larger cartridge, but in general, it's still the same platform. And I also get to benefit from the price of the Smith & Wesson M&P series, because this is their top tier model and it's still only like $700, right? Like, this is not like an expensive gun in the sense of how much it has to offer. So there's a lot of benefits there. There's been some reliability discussions online and things like that. And the third round I put through this pistol actually choked, which was just a full metal jacket of 180 grain MagTech round. But every other round since then, including additional rounds of that same ammunition, has fired no problem at all and fed no problem at all. I haven't had a single other malfunction. So it might have just been teething or some kind of like quick break-in or something. I'm not sure, but it's good to go now. I haven't had any more problems with it, so I'm actually pretty impressed with it. And with the ported barrel and everything else it has going on and the really aggressive grip texture, it's pleasant to shoot for 10 millimeter. This is not the first 10 millimeter handgun I have owned, so I have that comparison. So 10 millimeter, adding that to your preparedness inventory may have some practicality, especially if you live somewhere with large predators, right? So if you're worried about bears, you're worried about mountain lions, or you're worried about, moose or something like that, I mean, the 10 millimeter does a lot better with those types of animals than something like a 9 millimeter will. And just for example, I had an encounter with a coyote here on the property one night, which had my dogs in danger, so I had to dispatch the coyote. And I shot it in the head with a 9 millimeter and it was still standing. Let's just say that. Was it the best shot placement? Probably not, because that's not the gun I would have chosen if I knew I was going to run into a coyote in the middle of the night. But still, surprising that I still had to do a little more to get the job done. Whereas 10 millimeter probably wouldn't have had to have a second shot. So I know, I'm a terrible marksman. I have no accuracy. I don't shoot enough. I don't train enough. I got it. Everyone's going to mention that now. It's fine. Believe what you want. I'm just telling you how it works. So 10 millimeter, As of right now, I want one in the inventory. I want the ability to have something when I go out into the wilderness and have something if I go out into bigger bear country that I know is going to provide a little bit more protection, right? And who knows, in the future, when we're dealing with AI enforcing robots that have, you know, Chinese made armor and weird faces, well, 10 millimeter might actually be a little bit more important to have at that point if you need that extra penetration to get to their circuitry. Moving on. What you see right here is a 30-year-old Sig Sauer P229, which has opened up the floodgates of really screwing up my ammo inventory and stockpile. Why is that? Well, here's the thing. This pistol, if you get it, which this one came as a 357 Sig, right? If you get an old P229 police trade-in and like 40 cal or 357 Sig, you can shoot 3 different ammunition types out of it. Now you can do that with Glock 23s as well and some other different pistols out there as long as somebody makes conversion barrels. But in general, with an old P229, which there will be a standalone video about this 100%, I can shoot 40 cal, 357 Sig, and 9mm out of this one pistol with just a barrel drop in, right? So if I install right now it has a 40 cal barrel in it. Not my favorite ammunition type. We'll get to that here in a second. But right now I'm running 40 cal in it. But all I have to do to switch to 357 Sig is drop in a 357 Sig barrel. And that's it, and we're good to go. Now, I also have a Barstow 9mm conversion barrel on the way. What that will let me do is put that in here. Some fit may be required. We'll see once I get it. And you may have to change a recoil spring depending on what you want to do with it. Because for the most part, my understanding is that it will still work, but you just won't get a lock open on empty, right? But either way, all I got to do is throw barrels in and then I can just use different ammunition types. So what this gun allows me to do is access 40 caliber Smith & Wesson, 357 Sig, and 9mm Luger in one pistol. And so in an ammo shortage or some sort of crisis like that, it gives you a lot of options. Or in a long-term SHTF event, let's say you're coming across ammo or who knows what's happening, right? Like, we don't know, but at the end of the day, if you get to the store or you get to the cache or you get to the bug out location or whatever it is, and the only ammunition there is 40 Smith & Wesson, well, this gun, you can just do that with now. Can't do that with a Glock 19, right? Now, a Glock 23 you could, and you could get a conversion barrel for that and do all that too, which is really cool. But with this particular pistol, what it does for me is it allows me to have one gun that can take 3 different ammunition types, which opens up additional availability of ammunition sourcing for that particular pistol. And then it also allows me to test out different ammunition types. So now I have the ability to shoot 9mm, 357 Sig, and 40 Smith & Wesson, compare them and find out whether or not any of those rounds has any additional benefits over 9mm that might be worth experimenting more, right, or exploring more. And then, bare minimum, I just have a good quality pistol that can still do it even with my 9mm stockpile. So that's what the purpose and practicality of this gun is. And in fact, out of every gun on the table you see right here, it's probably the most practical for that reason. It doesn't mean I have to stock up on 40 Smith & Wesson. It doesn't mean I have to stock up on 357 Sig. It just means that I have the ability to use those ammo types if that ever becomes an issue. And as we saw in 2020, 40 Smith & Wesson was still on the counter long after 9mm dried up, right? So those are considerations to make. Now, another interesting thing with this pistol is that a lot of people don't know much about 357 Sig because it's a little bit harder to come by, it's more expensive, a lot of companies don't really support it anymore. Sig Sauer themselves don't even support that cartridge anymore, which I find hilarious because they helped to invent it, right? But a 357 Sig is actually a bottleneck cartridge. And what that does is it makes a very reliable feeding system in the sense of the cartridge not getting hung up on the feed ramp almost ever. So you have a very reliable cartridge design. And guess what? They even make 357 Sig and 180 grain hard cast now. So that's something I'm going to be testing out because what if this is perfectly suitable for, let's just say, predator defense or bear defense, similar to the 10mm over here. Now I've got a smaller frame pistol that I can defend from bears with while also using for my personal defense when I'm carrying in 9mm, right? Or in 40 cal or whatever you like. There's a lot of versatility here. So these are going to be tested out on the channel at some point here in the future. But this pistol allows me to do all that. I now have the access to all those different ammunition types so I can formulate a better opinion about what their use case scenario may be. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. Now, last but not least, right here, we have a P229 Legion from Sig Sauer, right? So this is a standard P229 from way back in the day. It doesn't have a rail, it's got a German frame, it only has the half cocking serrations here on the slide, but it still works 100% well. It's very reliable, it's fun to shoot, feels good. It's a good gun. I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest with you. But this is the top of the line 229 that Sig still provides now, and they only have it chambered in 9mm, right? What's nice is that it's optics ready, it's got a rail for a light, and it's all tuned in the sense of the action is a Gray Guns or Gray Ghost Precision trigger action tune and all this kind of stuff, right? The short reset triggers in there, all kinds of things, right? This video is not about this gun. This gun is just here as an example as to something else you could justify some practicality with if you wanted to add another firearm platform to your already existing ammunition stockpile, right? So this is a 9mm, right? 9mm, good to go. Nothing to see here. And it's the same as this gun right here, but just with some upgrades, right? Same idea, same platform, same size frame. In fact, I can put these magazines in there, obviously without chambering anything because that would be bad. But regardless, this gun is this gun, but just in 9mm and with modern upgrades. Now, what's nice about that is that if you wanted to experiment with something that is a little higher end, has a little bit more features in the sense of how comfortable it is to shoot and the level of performance it can provide, and you want to have something that can provide an additional level of safety when carrying, then exploring a pistol like this might be worth it. Now, what do I mean by that? This is a double action, single action pistol. No, this is not the single action only variant. I'm not really a fan of that. We'll talk about that another time. But what's nice is that with double action, you can put your thumb on the hammer when you holster, and there's no chance this gun's gonna go off, right? The slide can't go back, the trigger can't go back. This gun is as safe as you can be when you're holstering, right? And that's something to keep in mind when you are concealed carrying. And then when you are holstered and you're carrying it around, if the trigger gets depressed somehow, it has a very heavy, about 10-pound trigger pull for that first double action pull. Whereas the single action pull is gonna be much lighter, but that's only after the first round goes off, right? So, for example, just to demonstrate, a double action pull is when it pulls the hammer all the way back, right? And then a single action pull is when the hammer is already cocked after the slide has actuated, and then now I have a much lighter trigger pull, which enhances your follow-up shots. But what's nice about this system is that it's one of the safest ways to carry a pistol because a striker fire is always just, if the trigger gets pulled, it's gonna go off unless it has a manual safety. A single action has to have the manual safety engaged or the trigger's too light, and that's definitely asking for trouble. The double action, single action is the balance between the two, where you don't need a manual safety, but the trigger has to be pulled quite hard for that first round to go off. And while you are holstering, you do have a mechanical and manual function that will prevent the firearm from discharging. So I wanted to test it out and I wanted to get some thoughts on it. And after shooting this old 229, I wanted to see what the top of the line one would be like in 9mm. And so far, I only have nice things to say. So that's the different guns I'm playing with right now. That's the different ammunition types I'm messing around with right now, I'm experimenting with. And that's my justification for having this diversity you see here on the table. Will they all stay in my inventory forever? That has yet to be seen. We don't know if they're gonna make the cut because I refuse to support the logistics required to maintain a pistol that has obscure ammunition, hard to source parts, isn't that shootable, doesn't provide a practical purpose, and isn't necessarily worth having, right? But these guns all have a level of practicality, which is why I'm still moving forward with finding out whether or not they have a place where they're going to have a permanent home. But it's possible I might decide that one or two or even three of them might not make the cut. But I will say, if one does stick around, the most likely one is this one right here. And that's just because of the versatility of ammunition types it allows me to access and the fact that it's been extremely reliable and it's 30 years old and still going strong, which means I'm pretty sure it's gonna go for another 30 years, no problem, right? Hopefully this gives you some things to think about. I just like to share this stuff every so often because I know it can get confusing when I put out a video about how to maintain a good managed and focused ammo stockpile. And then I put out the next video about this weird ammunition that I'm using and the strange caliber and this weird gun that doesn't really make any sense for the stuff I was doing before. Like I said, I'm a prepper, but I'm definitely a gun guy as well. And as a gun guy, it can be hard to balance those things sometimes. And if something's not practical, or I don't shoot it, or it never gets used, it gets out of my safe and I never see it again. And that's just what I do. And then maybe I try out a different gun in order to see if there's something else that I've been missing. Or maybe I invest that money into more preparedness. So food storage or additional solar components or whatever that might be. But that's just how I do it. And this is where I'm at right now, and I wanted to share that with you. Let me know your thoughts down below about especially the pistols here on the table. Any ideas about which ones should make the cut, which ones don't make any sense, what you think wouldn't really be worth the time. Let me also know if there's stuff that I should be trying out or testing that could be beneficial for everybody, not just the preparedness community, but the gun community too. Stuff like, let's throw something obscure out there, like 30 super carry, right? Like, I have zero experience with that. I don't necessarily want to mess with it, but maybe there's something there that I don't know about, right? So these are all things to consider. Anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, that's gonna be it for Magic Prepper.